I stared at my phone, the knot in my stomach tightening with every passing second. The Instagram post had only been up for 30 minutes, but already it was gathering likes, comments, heart emojis, compliments, and reminiscing from his friends. My boyfriend's account had just slapped me with a cold reminder of a past I didn't share with him. 4 photos. 4 moments frozen in time with his ex. The first photo was a sunset at some beach, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm draped across her. The second was a coffee shop selfie, her head leaning against him, his hand on her waist. The third was from a Halloween party, matching costumes, his hand on her waist. And the fourth? A hiking trail, both laughing at the camera, looking carefree and happy. The caption? The good old days. Sometimes you have to appreciate what shaped you. I froze. It wasn't the photos themselves that hurt. It wasn't even the fact that he had a past. I knew that. We all had one. But this was something else. She was sharing their memories publicly while we were supposed to be building new ones. The good old days. A clear comparison to what we were trying to create together. Before I had time to process it, I heard him walking out of the bathroom, still adjusting his shirt. He looked at me, and I knew something was off. I tried to keep my voice steady as I looked at him, my thoughts scattered. Hey, can we talk about that Instagram post? He glanced at his phone without skipping a beat, scrolling, and then he sighed. What about it? The one with your ex, the good old days caption? I couldn't hold back the frustration anymore. He rolled his eyes. Seriously? It's just nostalgia. We had good times back then. I felt my stomach churn. You think it's okay to post those while we're together? He shrugged dismissively, clearly irritated. You're being insecure. The word hit me like a slap. I wasn't being insecure. I was being disrespected. I'm not being insecure. I'm saying it's inappropriate to publicly romanticize your ex while we're in a relationship. He clicked his tongue, his voice rising. It's just old photos. It doesn't mean anything. Then why post them now? I asked, my voice barely containing the anger. Why that caption? He grabbed his jacket, jaw tight with frustration. I don't have time for this. Are we going to dinner, or are you going to keep freaking out over nothing? His words stung, more than I wanted to admit, but it wasn't just about the photos anymore. It was how he couldn't even consider my perspective, how he wasn't even trying to understand why I felt hurt. The word jealous still rang in my ears as he stormed out of the apartment. The door slammed behind him, the sound of it echoing in the silence that followed. I stood there for a few minutes, unable to move, my heart pounding in my chest. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about the photos. It was about how he had dismissed me, belittled my boundaries, and refused to even acknowledge my feelings. I needed to make a choice. I opened my phone, went to Facebook, and simply changed my status from in a relationship to single. No explanation, no post, just a clear, definitive statement of what had happened. Then I sent him a message. Status updated to single. Now you can have all the new days you want with whoever. We're done. I turned off my phone, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt calm. I had made my decision. I had always believed in love that lasted. The kind of love where both people were in sync, supporting each other, no matter the circumstances. It wasn't always easy, but it was real. And when I met him, I thought I had found it. We met through mutual friends. It was one of those casual get-togethers where everyone was a little too tipsy, but something clicked. We talked all night, laughed about the dumbest things, and by the end of the evening, I felt like I had known him forever. A week later, we had our first date. It wasn't anything fancy, just a walk in the park, followed by coffee at a local cafe. But there was something about him that felt so right, so comforting. Over the next few months, things moved fast. We both knew what we wanted. We talked about the future a lot, our plans, our hopes, the things we would do together. It wasn't just talk either. We made plans to meet each other's families. He had introduced me to his friends, and I had introduced him to mine. There was this warmth between us, this sense of certainty that we were on the same path. We hadn't moved in together yet, but it felt like we already had. We spent most nights at each other's places, falling into a routine. We had long conversations in bed about everything and nothing, laughed over ridiculous inside jokes, and shared small, tender moments. It was the kind of connection I had always wanted. I remember once, he said he was saving up to buy me a ring. He didn't say it in a grand, romantic way, just casually, like it was a normal conversation. But for me, it felt like a promise. The kind of promise that said, we're in this together. That ring represented everything we talked about. the future, the commitment, the life we were building. But looking back, I can see it now. There were signs, little cracks, that I ignored. They were so small, I didn't even realize I was overlooking them. Things he would say when we were out with his friends, moments where I felt a hint of distance. But every time I questioned it, he'd reassure me, make me laugh, and I'd feel silly for doubting. I guess I wanted to believe the best in him, to believe that we were building something strong. I should have trusted my instincts more. It started small, a comment here, a gesture there, little things that, at the time, I brushed off as nothing. But in hindsight, I can see the beginning of the unraveling. It wasn't just the occasional late-night text he'd receive, or the way his friends would talk about his ex in front of me, like it was no big deal. It was the way he started to pull away ever so slightly. I'd notice him staring at his phone more often, his responses to my messages a little delayed. He wasn't texting me back as quickly, and when I asked if anything was wrong, he'd brush it off with a quick, "Everything's fine, just busy." But it wasn't just the silence in his messages, it was the emotional distance, the way he seemed less present when we were together. He'd talk about his ex, not in an angry or upset way, but casually, like it was just another part of his life. I told myself it was nothing. He was just talking, right? It didn't mean anything. But when we were alone, and I asked him if he missed her, he'd deflect the question, saying something like, "It's just history, you can't erase it." I remember one evening we were having dinner, and his phone rang. He immediately reached for it, his face tensing as he glanced at the caller ID. I didn't say anything, but the way his entire demeanor shifted felt off. When he hung up, I asked who it was, and he gave me a quick, "Oh, just a friend," with a half smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I let it go. I didn't want to overthink it, but in that moment, a part of me felt something was wrong. Something was changing, and I wasn't sure if I could stop it. Then there was the night I found myself scrolling through social media. It wasn't anything out of the ordinary. I was just passing time while he was getting ready. But as I refreshed my feed, something caught my eye. His ex had posted a picture of them together. A picture from a beach trip they took months ago, back when they were dating. The caption read, "The good old days. Sometimes you have to appreciate what shaped you." I could feel my heart stop for a second. A cold, sick feeling spread through me. I clicked on the picture and scrolled through more. There were multiple posts, old photos of them together. Each picture seemed to capture a moment I wasn't a part of. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. I was confused. What did this mean? Why was she posting these now? And why was he still liking and commenting on her posts like nothing had changed? I had tried to ignore it, tried to brush it off as nothing. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It felt like a sign, like something was creeping into our relationship, something I couldn't control, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't fully let go of her. When he came out of the bathroom, I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, my thoughts jumbled with doubts and questions. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about the pictures. It was about something deeper, something I hadn't seen coming. That evening, we were supposed to go out for dinner. I had been looking forward to it all day, thinking it might be a chance for us to reconnect, for me to let go of the tension that had been building in my chest. But that post, those photos kept swirling in my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When he walked into the room, still buttoning his shirt, I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. The way he'd acted lately, the distance, the phone calls, the ex, something had changed between us. I couldn't ignore it anymore. "Hey, can we talk about that Instagram post?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but the edge of frustration crept in. He stopped in his tracks, looking over at me with a confused expression. "What about it?" he asked nonchalantly, as though we weren't about to have the conversation that had been looming over us for days. "The one with your ex," I said, my voice tight. "The good old days caption. Why post that now, while we're together?" He stared at me for a moment, then rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. "Oh my God, seriously? It's just nostalgia. We had good times back then. What's the big deal?" I felt my chest tighten. The big deal? Was he really acting like it wasn't a big deal? His voice dripped with condescension, dismissing my feelings as if they were nothing. "I just think it's disrespectful," I said, trying to hold my ground, my heart pounding in my chest. "Why would you post those pictures now, while we're building something together? It doesn't make sense." He sighed, looking frustrated. "You're just being insecure. That's all this is. I'm not doing anything wrong." His words hit harder than I expected. In that moment, I realized that this wasn't just about the post. It was about how he had been treating me, how he hadn't considered my feelings, how he had so easily brushed off my concerns. He wasn't even willing to acknowledge that this was affecting me, that it hurt. "No, I'm not being insecure. I'm being disrespected," I said, my voice shaking. "It's not about the photos themselves. It's about how you're acting like nothing has changed. Like this doesn't mean anything. Like I don't matter." He scoffed and grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. "Look, I don't have time for this. Are we going to dinner, or are you going to keep throwing a tantrum over nothing?" His words stung. A tantrum? Was that what I was doing? I wasn't overreacting. This was real. He was gaslighting me, making me feel like I was crazy for having boundaries. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my composure. "Fine," I said, taking a step back. "You go. I'm not hungry anymore." He didn't even hesitate. He grabbed his keys and walked toward the door, not sparing me a second glance. "Whatever," he muttered, slamming the door behind him as he left. I stood there motionless, in the middle of the apartment. The silence felt deafening. I was hurt, confused, and furious. My heart felt like it was being crushed under the weight of the situation, but I couldn't bring myself to cry. Instead, I just stood there, staring at the door, as the reality of what had just happened settled in. He was gone, and I was left standing there, holding onto the pieces of a relationship that seemed to be slipping away from me faster than I could keep up. I wasn't even sure what had just happened. All I knew was that something had snapped inside me. I couldn't let him keep treating me like this. I couldn't keep letting him walk all over me. I grabbed my phone, opened Facebook, and without thinking, I changed my relationship status from in a relationship to single. I didn't make a post about it. I didn't explain anything. It was a simple, quiet statement of what had just happened. Then I texted him. "Status updated to single. Now you can have all the new days you want with whoever. We're done." I turned off my phone, sinking into the couch, my body trembling. It felt final, like a weight had been lifted, but at the same time, a new weight had settled on my chest. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control. The silence in the apartment was overwhelming. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at the glowing screen of my phone, willing myself not to break down. The text had been sent. My relationship status had been changed. It was done. He was gone. And for the first time in months, I wasn't sure how to feel. At first, I thought I would be angry. I thought I would feel rage or betrayal or some powerful emotion that would fuel me through the aftermath of this mess. But all I felt was exhaustion, like I had run a race I didn't want to compete in, and now I was just left standing at the finish line, unsure of what to do next. The night dragged on in a haze. I tried to distract myself with mindless TV, but every few minutes my phone would buzz with a new notification, another message from him. When I finally picked it up, my heart skipped a beat. "Are you kidding me right now?" it read. "You changed your status? That's so immature. Call me back now." I stared at the message for a long time, my fingers hovering over the keys. My mind raced. He had done it again, gaslighting me, making me feel like I was the one in the wrong for standing up for myself. But this time, I wasn't going to let him manipulate me again. Not this time. I put the phone down and forced myself to breathe. The urge to respond, to fix it, was there, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. He had already shown me who he was. His words meant nothing now. This wasn't about fixing things anymore. It was about respecting myself. As the night wore on, the texts grew more frantic. They were a mix of anger and desperation. "Please call me," one message said. "This is crazy. My family's asking questions. My mom saw the status change. Call me. Please pick up." Then another one, a little later. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have posted those pics. Please change it back. My parents are asking what happened. This is humiliating. Everyone can see it. Please, I'm begging you." My heart twisted as I read them, but then I stopped myself. This was the same manipulation, the same cycle of guilt-tripping and making me feel responsible for his actions. He had crossed a line, and now he was trying to make me the villain. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking slightly as I typed my response. "You dismissed my feelings, called me insecure, and refused to see any issue with publicly romanticizing your ex. That's not a relationship. Status stays. We're done." I hit send before I could second-guess myself, then turned off my phone. It felt strange cutting him off like that, but it also felt like the right thing to do. My chest still felt heavy, but I didn't feel as helpless as I had earlier. The truth was, I wasn't the one causing the chaos here. He had created this mess by dismissing me, by putting his past over our present, and by making me feel small. But I was done. I wasn't going to be a doormat anymore. I spent the rest of the night in silence, curled up on the couch, thinking about everything that had led me to this moment. The way he had casually dismissed my feelings, the way his ex still seemed to have a hold on him, the way he couldn't even see that what he had done was wrong. I knew the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be more messages, more pressure, more manipulation, but I was ready to stand my ground. I wasn't going to let him walk all over me anymore. The next few days were a blur of messages, calls, and a sense of mounting pressure. It felt like I was trapped in a whirlwind of guilt, anger, and confusion. Each message from him pushing me further into a corner. He wouldn't let go. And every attempt to distance myself only seemed to make him more desperate. I had blocked his number, but he found ways to reach me, through text apps, Facebook, even through mutual friends. The barrage of messages was unrelenting. "Please, just talk to me," one text read. "I don't understand why you're doing this. I made a mistake, but you're being so harsh about it." "You're breaking up with me over Facebook?" another one said. "We're better than this. We've always been good together." But it wasn't about Facebook. It wasn't even about the pictures anymore. It was about him refusing to respect me, my feelings, and the boundaries I was setting. I wasn't breaking up with him over social media. I was breaking up with him because he had repeatedly disrespected me, made me feel small, and ignored my needs. I thought about everything he had done, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the constant belittling of my feelings. And then I realized something that made my stomach twist in knots. He wasn't just ignoring me. He was trying to control me. I wasn't the only one affected by this mess, though. His family had started calling me, too. His mother, his friends, his father, all of them had something to say about the situation. His mom was the first to reach out. "Why did you do this? My son's been nothing but good to you," she said in a message. "You're embarrassing him. His father's furious." I couldn't even respond at first. The nerve of her, calling me the one embarrassing him after everything he had done. It was like she didn't even see how her son had been treating me. The audacity. And then there was his best friend, reaching out with the same tired lines. "You've got to stop this. You two need to talk. He's really hurt. He loves you." What they didn't understand was that love didn't justify disrespect. They couldn't see the deeper issue, the emotional manipulation, the disregard for my boundaries. They didn't understand that the way he was acting wasn't love. It was control disguised as concern. By the time his father called me, I had reached my breaking point. "You need to fix this with my son," he demanded. "You owe him an apology. You can't just walk away like this." "Your son hasn't treated me with respect for a long time," I snapped, my voice shaking with pent-up emotion. "I'm not apologizing for standing up for myself. He's the one who needs to apologize." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then, in a low voice, he said, "He doesn't understand what he's done wrong, but you're the one pushing him away." I hung up before he could say anything else. The idea that I was the one pushing him away felt like a slap in the face. He had pushed me away long before I ever had the chance to push him back. But no matter how many times I shut them down, no matter how many boundaries I set, it didn't stop. Every time I thought I was free from the pressure, another person would come at me, trying to convince me to fix things, to just talk to him, to let it go. It was like the world was against me. I had no choice but to keep pushing forward. I blocked his family's numbers, stopped responding to his friends, and turned off my phone when I needed to. I needed space. I needed time to think and process what had happened. I wasn't going to let them guilt trip me into getting back into a toxic relationship. I had already made up my mind. But I wasn't prepared for what came next. The days felt like they stretched on forever, and yet it seemed like the situation was only escalating. I couldn't escape the constant reminders that I had made the decision to walk away. No matter how many times I told myself I was doing the right thing, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of my mind. I had blocked his number, his family, and even his closest friends, but nothing could stop the overwhelming weight of guilt that had begun to settle deep in my chest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face, the confusion, the anger, the hurt. I heard his voice in my head, the way he begged me to take him back, the way he made me feel like I was doing something unforgivable. It was like the world had flipped upside down, and I was the one left holding the broken pieces of a relationship I had once thought was built to last. But as much as I tried to silence the doubts, there was one thing I couldn't escape: the manipulation. The way he had made me feel small, the way he had twisted my words and my emotions to make me believe I was the one in the wrong. I spent days going over everything. Our conversations, the times I had tried to talk to him about my concerns, the moments where I had begged for him to understand. I had tried to fix things, but he hadn't listened. He hadn't seen how his actions were hurting me. The guilt started to seep in. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe I should have just let it go. Maybe I should have forgiven him and moved on. But then, in the middle of one of my sleepless nights, I received a text from him. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea for understanding. It was an ultimatum. He told me he could not move on, that he wouldn't move on until I gave him the closure he was asking for, that he needed me to fix everything, to make things right again. I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the keyboard, fighting the urge to respond. The temptation to give in, to smooth things over, to go back to the person I had once loved was overwhelming. But the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't go back. And yet, in that moment, the weight of what I had done felt unbearable. The tears came, unbidden. I hadn't cried in days, but now the dam had broken. I had been holding on to so much, burying my emotions under the pressure of everything that had happened, and now it all came rushing out. I was terrified. Terrified of the future, terrified of the fallout, terrified that I had made the wrong choice. And in the midst of it all, I felt completely alone. I didn't want to feel like this. I didn't want to be the one who had to walk away. I didn't want to be the one left standing with all the pain, all the broken promises, all the unanswered questions. But I also knew one thing. I could not go back to that place. I couldn't go back to someone who didn't see me, who didn't respect me, who didn't understand how much I had tried. I had to keep moving forward, even if it hurt, even if I felt like I was breaking. I had to choose myself, and that was the hardest part of all. The days after the breakdown felt like an eternity. I thought I would be able to move on easily, to find peace after making the decision, but the truth was, the aftermath was much harder than I had anticipated. The guilt, the doubt, the constant questioning of whether I had made the right choice, it weighed on me more than I expected. But one thing became clear. I couldn't keep second-guessing myself. The man I thought I knew, the person I had trusted, had shown me exactly who he was, and I had to stop letting his words, his manipulation, control my life. The turning point came unexpectedly, like a rush of clarity. It wasn't in the form of an apology or some grand gesture from him, but in a moment of silence. For once, I didn't feel the need to answer every text, respond to every call, or explain myself. I realized I had nothing left to explain. It was one evening when I was sitting in the living room, staring at the empty space around me. My phone buzzed, another message from him. I had told myself I wouldn't respond anymore, that it wasn't worth my time, but something inside me broke the silence and I opened the message. It wasn't a new plea for forgiveness. It wasn't him begging for us to try again. It was just him complaining about how unfair everything had been. He wanted me to fix things. He wanted me to make the decision he couldn't. He wanted closure, but on his terms. And in that moment, I felt everything shift inside me. This wasn't about him. It was about me. I wasn't responsible for his happiness anymore. I wasn't responsible for his feelings, his confusion, or his pain. I had been carrying that weight for too long, and I realized that I had been trying to fix someone who didn't even want to be fixed. I put the phone down, my breath coming in quick bursts as I fought the urge to text him back, to make everything right again, to smooth things over. But I knew that if I did that, I would lose myself. I had spent so much time questioning myself, doubting my own choices, trying to make him see things from my perspective. But the truth was, he wasn't going to change. He wasn't going to understand, and I had to stop waiting for that to happen. For the first time in what felt like forever, I made a decision that was purely for me. I wasn't going to keep looking back, waiting for him to come around. I was going to move forward. It wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be painless. But I was done holding on to something that wasn't meant to be. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. The air outside was crisp, fresh, and as I stepped out, I felt a sense of freedom, a sense of release. I wasn't free from the pain yet, but I was free from the weight of waiting, free from the emotional manipulation, free from the constant pressure to fix everything for someone else. And that in itself was enough. The days that followed my decision to finally move on were filled with a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, there was relief, the kind of deep, bone-chilling relief that came from not having to carry the weight of someone else's emotional baggage anymore. But on the other hand, there was a lingering ache, like I was grieving the loss of something that had once meant so much to me. The fallout was swift. It wasn't just from him, it was from everyone around us. His family, his friends, people I thought I could trust, all seemed to have an opinion about what had happened, about what I should have done, what I should still be doing. I got more calls, more texts, more messages from people who didn't seem to understand that I wasn't just making a mistake, I was standing up for myself. His mother was the first one to reach out again, and her message was both harsh and pleading. "You've humiliated him enough," it read. "You need to fix this. You owe him an apology. You've broken him." I didn't respond. I couldn't. The expectation that I should apologize for trying to protect myself, for walking away from a relationship that had been built on lies, was suffocating. I felt like I was suffocating under the weight of their demands. Then came the message from his best friend. "Hey, you need to talk to him. He's falling apart. He's a mess without you." The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to feel like this. I didn't want to feel like I was the cause of his suffering, but then I remembered everything that had led to this point. I remembered how he had treated me, how he had made me feel small, how his indifference to my pain had been the breaking point. It wasn't my responsibility to fix him. It never had been. His father, too, had his say. A stern message came through one afternoon. "This has gone on long enough. You need to be an adult and fix this. Stop being so selfish. You're ruining everything." I couldn't believe it. How could they all be so blind? They were all focused on how he felt, how he was struggling, but no one seemed to care about how I felt, how I had struggled, how my boundaries had been ignored for so long. And then came the hardest part, the awkward conversations with my own friends. Some of them were supportive, but others were more neutral, unsure of what had actually happened between us. One of them asked, "Do you think maybe you overreacted? I mean, we all have exes. It wasn't that big of a deal, was it?" For a moment, I wanted to second-guess myself, to explain myself to everyone around me, to make them see what had happened the way I saw it. But I stopped. I wasn't going to explain myself to anyone. I didn't owe them an explanation. I didn't owe anyone anything. I began to distance myself, not just from him, but from everyone who didn't respect my decision. I deleted the last of his friends from my social media, turned off my phone, and spent time alone, reflecting on everything I had gone through. I wasn't angry anymore. I was exhausted, but I wasn't going to let his actions dictate my life any longer. The weight of his family's expectations, the guilt that I was somehow to blame for the fallout, it didn't matter anymore. I had chosen myself, and that had to be enough. The reality of it all slowly began to sink in. The relationship was over. He was gone. His family was angry with me. His friends were disappointed in me. And yet I didn't feel like I had lost everything. I had gained something important, my own peace of mind. I was finally free from the emotional manipulation, the pressure, and the lies. As the days passed, I began to feel the weight lifting, piece by piece. The emotional fog that had clouded my mind for so long started to clear. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone anymore. I didn't need to apologize for standing up for my own dignity. And in that clarity, I began to heal. It's been a few weeks now since I made the decision to walk away. The dust has settled, and I can finally look back on everything with a little more clarity. The fallout from my choice was brutal, no doubt about it. But it was also necessary. He's still reaching out. The messages are less frequent now, but they still come. Empty apologies, accusations, attempts to guilt-trip me into taking him back. And I've ignored every single one. I've blocked him on everything, and when his name pops up on my screen, I remind myself of why I did this in the first place. In the beginning, I struggled with the idea of being alone. I feared I'd never find someone who would love me the way I deserved. I feared that I'd made a mistake, that walking away was the wrong choice, even though everything inside me told me it was the only way forward. But the truth is, I am stronger than I thought. Walking away from that relationship wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of self-respect. I refused to settle for a love that wasn't healthy, that didn't honor who I am and what I need. I refused to make myself small to fit into someone else's world. I've spent more time with friends, rediscovered passions I had put on hold, and spent quiet evenings with myself. learning how to be content alone. It's been difficult at times, sure, but it's also been liberating. I'm learning to trust myself again, to listen to my instincts, to honor my boundaries without feeling guilty. The one thing I know for sure now is that I am worth more than I gave myself credit for. I don't need someone else to validate me. I don't need to prove my worth to anyone. I know my value, and it doesn't lie in the hands of someone who couldn't see it. As for him, I don't wish him any harm, but I won't apologize for walking away. The truth is, he made his choices. I just had to make mine, and those choices led me to a place where I can finally breathe, where I can finally feel like myself again. I've learned that love isn't about sacrifice at the cost of your own happiness. It's about finding someone who lifts you up, who respects you, and who truly sees you. And if that means letting go of someone who couldn't do that, then I'm at peace with it. Life moves on, as it always does, and for the first time in a long time, I'm moving forward without looking back. The status stays single, and for once, I'm not bothered by it.